Okay, so I got Sam here. The NFL draft is coming up in about less than 2 months. What are we talking about?
I think we're talking about quarterbacks. It's not really that important of a
Oh,
position, right?
yeah, that's right. That one position that everybody just seems to forget about. Why are we doing this again?
I don't know. It seems like something that we've done in the past, or maybe we've done every year for the past 5 or 6 years
Yeah,
at this
something
point.
like that.
Probably
Okay.
longer than that at this point.
All right, all right, all right, all right. We're done playing around. That is right. We are talking about the top five QB prospects and, of course, some honorable mentions because you just have to. Uh, Sam, initial impressions with this quarterback class, especially compared to last year where we had six quarterbacks go off the board, and we had one that had maybe the best rookie quarterback season of all time, another that was the biggest surprise for the biggest surprise team in the NFL last year, a generational prospect that didn't quite live up to expectations, a guy that we thought of as a project that actually showed a lot of promise when they took over the most questionable decision, I think, in the last 10 years that might actually have been a smart decision. What? The most pro ready guy that unfortunately ended up getting hurt. And who am I missing? Who am I missing? Am I missing somebody or is that all six?
I think we got him. I think we got him.
Yeah, I lost count.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah,
many
yeah.
quarterbacks got taken last year. Where would you put the top guy in this class compared to the others?
Top guy in this class, I'd probably put him at three, compared to last year.
Really? Because some people
Yeah.
wouldn't have him as seven. So why number three?
Um, so we'll get into who my top guy is. I think they have a lot of traits that will translate well into the NFL. And I think, there's a little bit of bias when it comes to this, right? Because I got to
Mhm,
see the rookie class this year play. So
mhm.
I've seen how some performed, how some didn't. So it kind of turns me off a little bit of them because I'm thinking of them as NFL players and not necessarily prospects. But I think my top guy has a lot of traits that would compare pretty well with the quarterback class of last year. Overall, the quarterback class this year doesn't compare. I don't think anyone is arguing that. But I think
No.
the top guys in this class are still good prospects.
Yeah, I don't think this is a 2022 situation where Kenny Pickett was the number one guy and then a guy didn't get taken until the third round. And
Right.
that was Brock Purdy. That was the Brock Purdy draft, right?
Was it?
Or,
I don't think so.
okay.
Oh no, it was. It was
Okay,
because
okay, it
yeah,
was.
yeah. Because
Yeah,
Brock Purdy's going into his fourth year now, right?
something like that. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure I had my years right on that. Yeah, it's kind of tough. I do think they probably would have been taken before JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix. Whether they would have been taken before or not McCarthy, Penix.
Yeah, you know what? I got to be honest with you. I completely forgot about JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
I guess that's what happens when you get a knee injury early in preseason and then you're out all year.
And
And
it's
then
going to be
Sam
crazy.
Darnold has a crazy season.
And it's
You kind of forget
crazy
about that
because
guy.
McCarthy had a great preseason. So the expectations went a little bit higher than I think a lot of people thought. And then he has the ACL, and Sam Darnold just has an amazing season.
Yeah.
So
And quick
it is
note.
a big quarterback question. And we'll get into teams that are going to have a need a quarterback and what they could possibly do. And of course, we will talk about the big trade that happened that caused me to re record two of the West teams. I was not happy about that. All right. Sam, should we waste any more time or should we jump right into
Now
this?
let's jump right into it.
All right. So I'm going to start. My number five is Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers. Now, the first game I
Oh,
watched was the SEC championship against Georgia. That was probably his worst game of the season. And I know he had the oblique injury. So it's really hard to try to separate that from the talent that is yours. And I'm going to say this, he has tremendous talent. I mean, there's a reason why he was the number one recruit, even when he reclassed. Remember, he reclassed, went to Ohio State when he should have been a senior in high school, goes to Texas as a 3 year starter. And look, I get it. Arch Manning was there, but Quinn Ewers did a lot of good things at Texas, and there's a lot of really good traits with Ewers. I love his arm strength. I love his mobility, and at times he will throw some of the best balls that you can see and some great NFL throws, especially in the SEC championship game. That's when I start to see some problems. At one point, he had great mobility, and then other times he was standing there like a statue and didn't have great pocket awareness. Especially, he took two blindside hits that I just did not like seeing, and you don't want to have your quarterback not feel that pressure back there. So that's one thing. But again, is that something we're going to see consistently, or was that just a product of the injury? And it's hard to separate that, but I have to go with what I saw on film. And I saw some really bad decisions and just some inaccurate throws. And then I went and looked at the Michigan game, which was probably his best game of the season. He had 5 touchdowns, no turnovers. However, there were a few passes that could have easily been intercepted. One, I think, was dropped, and the other, if the defender was like 2 inches over, it would have been maybe even a pick six. I can't remember exactly what would have happened if that did get intercepted. But yeah, and then I saw one other game, which I can't remember. It was another one where he was really good. He threw like an interception early and then was just spectacular the rest of the game. So there's a lot of good things to like about Quinn Ewers. It's just I just didn't like the negatives were just too much for me. And that's why I have him at number 5. And it's really tough trying to figure out where Ewers is going to go. I mean, talent wise, he should be a first round pick. But when you look at the tape, especially from this year, maybe a fourth round pick. So I could see him going anywhere from the second to the fourth round, maybe even top of the fifth, but that's about as low as I see him going. If you get him into a good quarterback room, I think you can turn him. Could we see him be a Dak Prescott? I mean, we could. We definitely could. And that's not an insult. I know some people are going to think that's an insult. That is not. I think Dak Prescott is a very good quarterback in this league. So, Ewers, I think he's going to be in the league for a long time. Whether it is as a starter is just going to be up to one, the team that takes him, which is for a lot of quarterbacks, and two, how he develops and if he's willing to continue to learn. So, what do you think about Quinn Ewers?
So I don't have Quinn Ewers in my top five.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't have him in my top five. He's probably my number six guy.
Okay.
Uh, and my number five is actually Will Howard. Um,
From
and
Ohio,
here's why. Yeah, from
from
Ohio
Ohio
State.
State that started at Kansas State.
Yeah, so here's why I don't like Quinn Ewers in my top five. I'm concerned about his ceiling because he is a 3 year starter, which is good, right? You
Yeah.
want a guy who has, experience, especially in college
Yeah,
football
they
going
I
into the
think the number
NFL.
is at least 25, maybe 30 starts in college.
Yeah, exactly. My concern is for his ceiling
Hmm.
because every single year, from his first to his second and second to his third, you're always like, oh, he has all this talent. He's going to take the next step. And then he never does. The
Mm,
fact that he never has been able to take that next step makes me concerned for is he going to be able to take like guys don't take that next step going into if you're waiting for him to take that next step into college it doesn't happen that often. The one time is that Brock Purdy, and you can even say that for Dak Prescott too. I think Dak Prescott's a good comp for him, and Dak went in the fourth round, so I can see that for Quinn Ewers is a fourth round, right?
mm.
So I he has a lot of talent, but when it comes to his the thing that always concerns me about him is when he's throwing the football, his torso and the top part of his body does not seem like it's talking to his legs all the time, right? The fact that there's
Yeah.
that disconnect and he's using his arm a lot and not throwing from the hips, not driving, his footwork is kind of inconsistent. Now, to be fair, like these are a lot of concerns for a lot of guys coming into
Yeah.
this class, but the fact that he hasn't been able to take the next step for me is what keeps him out of my top five.
Okay. So you have Will Howard. Go ahead, break him down.
It really comes down to this is a bad QB class, so I'm trying to find traits that I think work going into the NFL, and it's a dumb reason to put him in my top five. But he won a national championship, right? Like guys who are you win in college and then you win in the NFL, right? That's you don't go as being an average quarterback from an average program to going to the NFL, except for one case, and that's Brock Purdy, and then being
Even then, I
an
wouldn't
elite,
consider
right?
Purdy really an average quarterback at Iowa State. He was a starter since he was a freshman.
Yeah, he was a 4 year starter, but I
Yeah.
mean, you're a 4 year starter and you're the last pick in the draft. There's a reason that happens, right?
Good point. That's a really good
Um,
point.
I think Purdy, love him or hate him, this isn't to talk about Purdy, but he is a product of a really good system, and that's helped him develop. But
Yeah.
Will Howard, he's coming from a really good program. Uh, was he, did he benefit from consistently having the best receivers in college football? Absolutely. Does he benefit from having, a really good offensive line? Yes, right?
Hmm.
Like he benefits from being
And two
with the
guys that
Ohio
are
State
probably going to
talent.
be drafted in the second round
Yeah,
at running back.
exactly. Right. I don't think he has, an athleticism. Like he was a middling athlete for the college level, right?
Yeah.
So then you go to the NFL where the best of the best athletes from college are there. He's not going to have the ability to outrun, defensive ends at the NFL level. I think he does have a good arm. I don't think he has a great arm. I think he has good accuracy. I don't think he has great accuracy. He can move around
Hmm.
enough that I think he can be one of those guys who gets drafted as a backup, and then he gets thrown into a game and people he plays decent enough and like, oh, is this our guy? And then 3 games later he throws a 3 pick game and you're like, no, he's not our guy. Right? That's the kind of guy I think he's going to be. He's going to have one good start coming off, and then people are going to be like, oh, why do we sleep on Will Howard? And then we're going to realize why we slept on Will Howard.
So you're saying Gardner Minshew.
Gardner Minshew. Yeah. A little bit better of an arm than Gardner Minshew, a little bit better athleticism, I think,
Yeah.
than Gardner Minshew. But Gardner Minshew's got moxie, so that
Yeah.
can take you a long way in the
Oh,
NFL.
yeah. So
So
this
yeah,
is
Will Howard's
interesting.
my number five.
So this is interesting. This might be the first time that we've had uh two different lists where I have one guy and you have somebody else. Is this the first time
Yeah,
that's happened?
I think so. I'm also interested to see who your number four is because I there's a chance my number four might be different from your number four.
Okay.
And
What's your
usually
number
we talk
four?
about our list before we
Yeah, this is
we
one I just
this
wanted to
time we're going in
surprise because
blind.
this
Yeah,
is such
yeah.
an interesting quarterback class to where literally we were just talking about this. One, two, and three is pretty consistent around the league. The numbers, yeah, the players might be different, but it's pretty much the same players one, two, three, four, five, and everybody else is very different. So that is going to be interesting. Who's your number four? I'm going to have you start this time.
My number four is Jalen Milrow.
Ah,
Uh,
that's mine. That's my number
okay,
four.
okay, okay, sweet. I'm glad we matched up on that one.
Definitely the
Um,
most athletic quarterback in this
Absolutely.
draft.
And that's why I have him as my number four
Oh,
because his
yeah.
athleticism, rivals that of. And it's not quite up there with Lamar Jackson coming out of college, but it's up there
Who
with
can be
Lamar
Lamar
and
Jackson, though?
that Lamar was an incredible. Lamar is underrated for his college quarterback, just career.
And I don't think
But
people realize the playbook that he had to memorize because that was Bobby Petrino, and his
Bobby,
playbook was very similar to an NFL playbook.
yeah,
I know we're going on a tangent about
yeah, we're going on
Lamar,
a
but
tangent. So Jalen Milroe's athleticism rivals Lamar and Jaden Daniels coming out,
yeah,
right? The
I
arm
think
talent
Daniels
is
is a better
not.
comp for him than
I
Milrow.
think so too because
Except, okay, I'm
I
gonna
actually,
let you
what? I
talk and then I'll
disagree.
go.
I disagree because I think Jaden Daniels is a really good comp with Lamar Jackson. I don't think Jaden Daniels is a good comp for Jalen Milroe because I
Okay,
just don't see the arm talent, right?
yeah,
Like his accuracy isn't great. His strength, his arm strength isn't great.
hmm
He's an athletic guy, and I think if he gets to the right system, I think a better comp, and I don't even like it, is to compare him to um Jalen Hurts, but the Alabama Jalen Hurts, not necessarily Oklahoma Jalen
okay,
Hurts,
okay, yeah, yeah. That's
because
fair.
that's a
That's fair.
Jalen Hurts took a step as a passer in Oklahoma, but and then still Jalen Miller is a different kind of runner than or Miller is a different kind of runner than Hurts
Yeah.
was. It's just the arm and the accuracy and it's just not there. And if he gets put into a system, kind of like what Greg Roman did with Lamar his first year, I could see him being successful if he stays healthy,
Yeah.
running kind of that run first, that option system that the Ravens ran with Lamar Jackson, Lamar's rookie year. I don't think Jalen Milrow has the ability to take the step that Lamar has taken in his career, or even Jalen Hurts has taken in his career. So the athleticism is one for one, and that's why he gets in my top five.
Yeah, and that's really the reason that I had him over Ewers is just the athleticism and the things that you can do with him as not just a quarterback, but as a football player. This is a guy that you can use in a number of ways. Now, whether he can develop as a passer, that it does remain to be seen because at times he's making NFL type throws. I saw him, I think I watched 3 games, and in every single one, I saw him make some terrific throws, some of which were dropped by his receivers, and I will admit that. But then other times he's making throws and decisions that are just very questionable. Like he overthrows his receiver and it's intercepted, or he's thrown into double coverage. So there's definitely that aspect to it. And yeah, the mechanics just aren't there. So guy is a real project. I mean, he is the definition of a project, the guy that it's Anthony Richardson pretty much because Richardson, we talked about him as a project.
Yeah, it's Anthony Richardson without the arm strength, right? Because
Exactly.
if Anthony Richardson didn't have the arm that he did, he
Hmm.
wouldn't touch the first round because you're
Yeah.
seeing all of the issues that he has in the NFL. So if you put Jalen Milrow in a situation like Anthony Richardson, he's not going to survive, right? But he's not going to be put in that situation because he's not going to be a top five pick, right? Milrow is going to be a middle round draft pick. I could see him going anywhere from the third to the seventh round, right? It really kind
Yeah.
of depends on if a team falls in love with him and if they feel like they have the tools in place to support him if he does have to get into the game, right? Because he's
I'm
not going to be
just
drafted to start.
Yeah, I'm just hoping we're not going to see another Geno Smith type situation where he's drafted by the Jets. I do not want the Jets getting anywhere near
Honestly,
him. Do
I
not
don't
say
think
you could see it.
I could see it. I could see it.
I knew you were going to say that.
I don't think they would take him in the second round like they took Gino, but
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't matter. It could be a whole different team and front office, but the Jets are still the Jets, so
yeah.
they would ruin him.
Hmm. All right, so that was number 4 with Jalen Milrow. Okay, number 3 is Ole Miss's Jackson Dart.
Yeah, that's pretty consensus that
And
he's the number three.
yeah, and I told Sam that one of these guys I absolutely love, and I think he's very slept on in this draft, and that's Dart. I think I could see him be drafted in the first round. I could see him start his rookie year, and I could see him play very solid football. To me, he's got the best deep ball out of any quarterback in this draft because every time I saw him throw a deep ball at Ole Miss, it was hitting a receiver in stride, and it was in the perfect spot. And he's very mobile. When Ole Miss, with their offense, they used him on design quarterback runs, and he did a great job with that. Now, one thing I will say, when his first read wasn't there, his plan was to take off and run, and that's something you just can't do in the NFL. But that might be a product of Ole Miss's offense. I don't know, but that's something that NFL teams are definitely going to have to talk him out of it. But works very well within the pocket. Like I said, got very good accuracy. I love his arm strength. And I think his mechanics are very good for him being a college football player. So there's a lot that you can work with Jackson Dart. And if he's drafted in the first round, it just really would not shock me at all.
I agree. Especially with it really kind of depends on how the top 10 goes.
Hmm.
Um, if
And what we think
two
Seattle's going to do, but we'll talk about that
exactly
later.
that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. If there's two quarterbacks that go in the top 10, then I could see him going to Seattle. I think they're what, 18 this year.
Yeah, 18.
Um, I could see him going to Seattle, right? And I think that would be a good situation for him.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Especially if they can hold
he
on to DK Metcalf.
right, right. He is a project, but I think he's a project not in the same way that Jalen Milrow is, right? Like he's a person that you put significant capital behind and you really try to build around. Um,
Like
he
a
I,
Patrick Mahomes type, or is
oh,
that too much of a
are you comparing
project?
Jackson? No,
No, no, no, no. I'm
no.
just talking about project wise because Mahomes was a project as well, but are we talking that kind, or is that still a little too much of a project to describe Dart?
Um, I think it's hard because the Chiefs obviously traded up to 11 to
Yeah.
pick Patrick Mahomes, right? So they had a little bit more faith than a lot of the scouting community and us did. Because
Hmm.
I
We
still
had him
remember the video.
four. We had him four.
I still remember
And
that. Yeah. We're not going to say who I put at number one. Um,
hey, I was right with my number one, so
uh,
until the stuff off the field, but we're not talking about that.
we're not talking about that. I think he could go in the first or even second round.
Hmm.
I can't imagine him falling out of the second round. I think he does have a lot of things that are to be that are desirable. I am not in love with his arm strength. I think it's sufficient for an NFL team, but it's not out of this world strong, right? I don't think that's a knock on him. I just don't
No,
think
no, no. Here's the
I
thing. People get so caught up with arm strength. It's like, oh, this guy has tremendous arm strength, and then you got somebody that has an NFL arm. Oh, it's just an average arm. It's
right.
like, uh, Tom Brady had an average arm. Kurt
Tom
Warner
Brady
had
had
an
an average
average
arm.
arm.
Lamar Jackson had an average arm, and he's got a really good deep ball. No,
Yeah, you want to
he
know who
can
had elite arm strength? Jamarcus Russell,
Jamarcus
Kyle
Russell,
Bowler, Ryan Leaf.
Anthony Richardson, right?
Anthony
Like
Richardson. Sometimes arm strength just doesn't translate to the NFL.
right.
You have to look at
The
everything else, and Dart's arm strength combined with everything else that he can do has me say he can be a 10-year starter in this league.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. The things that give me a little bit of concern with him is his footwork. I think that's a big
Yeah,
concern for a lot of people. Um, I think he has the ability to make throws with anticipation, which is huge, right? Because you see
yeah,
that issue with Justin Fields is, and that was an issue with Justin Fields coming out was his ability to make throws with anticipation
yeah,
rather than waiting for something to open up and then throwing. Jackson Dart can do
yeah,
that. I'm concerned with his ability to play against NFL coverages, and he's coming from the SEC, right? So
yeah,
that helps him out. But when you're his ability, I think, to work against a zone defense is going to be there's some room to be desired with
yeah,
that. But that's something that can be developed, right? That's he has the skills to play quarterback, and he has the ability to play. I just think his footwork and his he's not an outstanding athlete, and if he's trying to outrun NFL players, he's not going to be able to do that,
yeah.
right? So then that can affect his his confidence is a huge thing. If he ends up getting sacked 60 times, it's not going to happen in the NFL because that would be a record. But if he ends up getting sacked, thirty,
No,
40
the
times in a
record is
season.
76, I think.
Oh, it's 76. Oh, I thought
They've,
David Carr was in the 50s.
I think it was in the 70s.
Oof. Um,
Either that or was 67. I might have gotten the numbers mixed
yeah.
up.
Um, and then I think he's a little too indecisive for me as well, which is
Yeah,
going to play a role into that zone defense. So when he can make throws with anticipation, he can do a great job of it. But if he's not on his first or second read, it's not looking great,
yeah,
right?
and that's something I was talking about earlier. So there are concerns with Dart, but it seems like those are coachable concerns. And it goes back to
Exactly.
Earwares. If he's willing to learn, which it does look like Dart is willing to learn, then yeah, I'd say go ahead, take him. If you're comfortable taking him, and let's say you're in the 20s, you want to trade up into the 20s, go right ahead. Do it.
Pittsburgh Steelers, they need a quarterback.
Yeah. All right. Number two.
Now,
Who's your
now
who?
our number
Oh,
two and number one, I feel like there's a chance they might be different for us.
uh-oh.
So my number two is Cam Ward. I
Whoa.
Yeah, so I like
Okay.
Cam Ward a lot. Don't get me wrong. There's just things that
No,
I like
I
about
like it. I like it when we are different on this.
yeah, there's just things that I like about Shador that um I have him as my number one.
Mhm.
Cam Ward has it all. He really does. He's
Yeah.
athletic. He's got a good arm. He's got good accuracy. I think one of my favorite things. It might be weird to like this, but his progression throughout, right? Coming from
I
a small
know. I
school to
love
Washington
it.
State to Miami to being a Heisman, like that development, seeing that going from where he was to being a Heisman finalist at Miami,
Yeah, to
you
see
you
that
can just see the
progression.
development. You can see how that's going to continue going into uh going forward, right? For me, really, Cam Ward and Shitter are one A, one B, right? I
Yeah.
think they're both really good. I think they're both worthy of, I'm going to say top 10 picks because I don't think either of them are outstanding. Like I wouldn't put them as in a prospect class as Caleb Williams or Jane Daniels like last
Yeah.
year. But again, when we're talking about where these guys fit in with the QB class of last year, I could see Cam Ward and Shooter Sanders being 3 and 4 in last year's class, right?
Yeah.
Over Penix and Bo Nix.
Hmm.
Um, I think he has a lot of potential, but he is coming from a very college style offense, and the NFL is has a lot of those aspects into it. But his ability to translate to the NFL, I think it's going to take some time, right?
It
And we
will.
see that with a lot of quarterbacks. It takes a little bit of time to adjust. It just depends on, can he get through that adjustment period and be the stud that he was at Miami with where he goes in the NFL. It depends on what system he goes to, right? If he goes to Cleveland, it doesn't matter who goes to Cleveland. Peyton Manning as a rookie could go to Cleveland and he would have been a bust, right? Um, it really kind of depends on where it goes. And I can see Cam Ward being drafted higher than Sanders. And
Hmm.
I understand that I might be a little bit breaking from the mold with that. But
Yeah.
if he goes to the Jets, he's done. But if he goes to a good system, and honestly, I like Tennessee. I think Tennessee has an opportunity. I don't think they're a black hole for prospect quarterbacks,
Oh,
right?
no, 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 no. Yeah. We'll get to that later. We'll get to that later,
Yeah,
but I have some thoughts on Tennessee's number one overall pick. Yeah, with Ward, I think the biggest thing for me, and it's the same thing I saw with Lamar when he was coming out. Even when he was getting out of the pocket and it looked like he could have taken off and run, his eyes are still downfield looking for a receiver. So he knows how to go through progressions and keep a play alive. The only problem is he's got a little bit of that gunslinger in him and where he's always
exactly.
trying to make a play instead of at times eating it. And at times he will. At times he is going to eat it, but he'll either throw a really bad pass or make a really bad decision or he'll take a sack. So that's something that can be taught out if you when you're hit a lot and when you get
Right. I think
intercepted.
I think that is kind of an asterisk of a bad trait for me
Yeah.
because I want my quarterbacks to be
Oh yeah, yeah,
aggressive.
yeah.
I want them to be trying to look for a big play, but it just depends on the balance, right?
Yeah.
Because you see that throughout Lamar's I use and obviously we use Lamar a lot because we're Ravens fans, right?
Yeah.
But you see Lamar learn how to kind of stop doing that, especially this past year when he threw only 4 interceptions and truly only one was his fault. You see that
And even
progression,
that
right?
was a miscommunication from what
Right,
I've
right.
heard.
So I want my quarterbacks to be
Oh
aggressive
yeah.
like that, but that was one of the big knocks about Caleb Williams last year, right? And we saw how detrimental that ends up being when it's not balanced with your ability to, take what's there, right? And that's all a coaching thing. But you also, again, you have to balance that out, right? Because you don't want a guy to lose his what makes him him, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that it's you don't want to coach all the way out.
Oh no, no, no.
And again, that comes down to what system and what philosophies are going to be put in place.
Yeah,
And
it's
we're putting this asterisk on because I think we've both been burned so many times by like, oh, I love this prospect, and then they just do terrible, and you're like, well, they did terrible because they went to a bad place. They were still a
yeah.
good prospect, right? So I really like him as a prospect, and I see a lot of comps with Caleb Williams coming out. And I think it's just from the fact that Caleb Williams went from Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley to USC. He just had more hype around his college career than Cam Ward did.
Yeah.
If Cam Ward was at Miami for all 3 years, then I think he would have the same hype that
Keep in
Caleb
mind, we're
Williams
talking
had.
about a guy that was a zero-star recruit in Cam Ward.
Right.
Zero. Not not a two, not a three, a zero-star recruit that had no major offers. His first stop, I I
It
already
was
forgot,
Incarnate
but
World. Yeah.
yeah, Infinite World. That was his first stop in college.
And then he went to Washington State, which a Pac-12 school. I can say that. Well, a
Yeah,
Pac-2 school. Sorry,
yeah. Well, it was Pac-12 at the time.
was Pac-12 at the time. Yes. And then he's at Miami, and then has the season that he did. You can like just the progression is there, right?
Yeah, when you see
So
growth like that in a college quarterback, especially when they're moving from one place to another, that can only be seen as a positive. And by the way, anybody that is still talking about the bowl performance, get over it. Come on, just get
who
over it.
cares?
It's like
This guy's going to be a
he had a
top
great
five
first
pick,
yeah, he had a great first half and Miami wanted to see who they could potentially have at quarterback. It's
right?
what teams are doing now. So just don't
You
worry about that.
you
But
think
Cam
that
Ward
was
has a
all his
lot,
decision?
huh?
Like Miami definitely like they're like, okay, we're losing Cam Ward. Let's see what we have on our roster
I think it
in
was
this kind of
both. I
situation,
think I
right? I
think it
think it
was
was
just
both,
both
right?
because Cam Ward is that much of a competitor. He probably would have talked him into letting him stay, but
Yeah.
I think
You
he
think if
also
Cam
knew if
Ward,
he has a serious injury, that's really going to affect him. So
right?
I think it
I,
was on both, but Cam did everything he needed to do in that game.
I think if Cam Ward didn't want to play in that game, he wouldn't have played at all, right?
Yeah.
Like he played in the first half because he wanted to play,
Yeah.
and then he also had to make a business decision, and
Yeah.
that was sitting out for part of the game, right? Like that's not a. I think I think that if anyone is actually concerned about that, it blows my mind. Like Christian
Yeah.
McCaffrey sat out completely from the game, right? And
And that was the
he's
first year of people doing that.
right.
And where other times players were injured and they didn't want to re-aggravate their injury. McCaffrey was fully healthy that season. So, and that kind of, I'll be honest, it kind of made me question. But then when I saw everybody else do it, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
now I get
it's.
it.
I don't think that's a real concern
No,
because,
no, no.
and I think the fact that he played in the first half is more of a good thing than him sitting out is
Yeah.
a bad thing,
Yeah.
right? Like the fact that he wanted to compete shows that what kind of competitor he is.
Yeah. So a lot of things to like about Cam Ward. If he's the first quarterback on the board, nobody would be surprised by that. Now we go to Sanders, son of Dion, and I know I've been saying his name wrong a few times. I'm sorry about that. I think I keep saying Shadir. It's Shador, isn't it?
Shador Sanders, yeah.
Shador
Now
Sanders.
he's your number two, correct?
He is my number two, and the only reason I have Cam Ward as my number one is I think his ceiling is higher than Sanders. That's the only reason. But with Sanders, I think this is the best pocket passer in this draft because you see what he can do from within the pocket. It's a lot of really good things. And of course, when you are the son of not just any player, one of the best corners of all times that knows what it takes to not only see a great quarterback, but to beat a great quarterback, which he did a lot, made sure that he took away their best receiver from what I'm talking about. He had football in his DNA. So it's not a shock that this happened. But for Sanders, he starts at Jackson State, where his father was.
To be
Does great.
clear, he didn't have to start at Jackson State. He absolutely chose
Yeah.
to start there. Like he
Yeah.
had Power Five talent,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it
He
was the
had
same
offers from
reason
all
as
over the place. I mean, at first,
Travis Hunter starting out there as well. Like Travis
yeah.
Hunter was a Florida State commit,
And I think
so
Sanders might have been going to Florida State as well. That I think that was talked about before Dion got to Jackson State. I
yeah,
was going to mention that.
it's not the same as Cam Ward going to Incarnate World,
No,
right?
no, no, no.
It's
No.
sorry, go ahead.
No,
He
you're
starts at
fine. You're
Jackson
fine. You're
State. Yeah,
fine. You're
yeah.
fine. You're fine. There added context needed to be included in that. So then he goes to Colorado and look, Colorado's program was a mess. Was a mess. They won like one game the year before they got there. Gets them to 4 wins and then gets them to I believe it was 9 wins last year.
I thought they went 8-4 in the regular season.
Whatever, whatever it was, brought that program back and really did a lot of good things. And I say he's the
Nine and
best
four.
from.
Yep, they
Okay,
went.
okay. So the reason I say he's the best, I said pocket passer, right?
Yep.
Is because of what he can do from within the pocket. Just like Cam Ward, you see him go through his progressions. He's making the right reads, and probably has the best footwork out of anybody in this draft, let's be honest. And
Yeah,
another guy that is athletic, that if you put him on a design QB run, he can do that, but he's not like a Jalen Milroe. He doesn't have that kind of athleticism, which for some reason is a negative. I don't know why that would be a negative.
I it depends on what kind of quarterback they are, right?
Yeah,
If he is trying to play like, like a Bo Nix or like one of those quarterbacks who moves around and runs a lot, or even a Patrick Mahomes, if you don't have that athleticism to translate in the NFL, it's a bad thing, right? But when you're a pocket passing quarterback,
which is what
it
Sanders
doesn't
is.
matter,
Yeah,
right? It doesn't matter. It all that matters is his athleticism within the pocket, right?
yeah,
Which even athletic quarterbacks can have bad pocket athleticism because they don't know how to sense pressure, they don't know how to move within the
yeah.
pocket. And Shador has that, right? He's to me, I think the best comp for Shador Sanders is Joe Burrow coming out from
I
LSU
love
after
that
his.
comp. I love
I,
it.
I think I think they're the same
I didn't even
quarterback, right?
think of that.
They have all of the same traits to me. I
Yeah.
think Shador Sanders is a little bit undersized compared to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is what 6'4", 220, right? Like
Yeah,
he's
Sanders
he,
is like 6'1", 6'2", something like that.
yeah, but again, size doesn't matter that much unless you're, even Bryce Young still had a pretty good year after he got benched. I still am concerned about his size in the NFL, but
Yeah.
Shador Sanders is not 5'8", 5'9", right? He's a 6 foot quarterback, and the things that I see that he can do in the pocket, and I see Joe Burrow doing that, and Joe
Yeah.
Burrow I think is one of the
Now
best
that I'm going
pure
back to the
quarterbacks in the
film, I'm
NFL,
definitely seeing that. Yeah.
right? And he can sense pressure well within the pocket. He
Oh
stands
yeah.
up, he takes hits. I think the biggest issue with Shura Sanders is that he holds on too long and
Hmm.
he's not athletic enough to evade that in the NFL, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't have the same athleticism that his father had.
Right. One of the best athletes in the NFL in history, right? Um, that's why I really like Shador Sanders is because I see what Joe Burrow was as a prospect, and I see what Joe Burrow has done in the NFL, and I see all of those positive traits in Sanders. And the reason why he's not a Joe Burrow prospect is because he holds on to the ball too long and he takes too many hits, right? He was sacked, what, 40, almost 40, 50 times last season,
Yeah, which is a combination of both his
which,
offensive line not being the best. I know they had Jordan Seaton, who was one of the top offensive linemen in last year's high school class, but the offensive line as a whole was just not
it was
where it
not
should have
there,
been.
right? And the talent, his receiving talent outside of Travis
Travis
Hunter
Hunter.
isn't there either, right? When you have a Travis Hunter on your team and you don't have anything else, Travis Hunter is going to get a lot more attention from the defense, and then you have to rely on your other receivers
And
making
it's not
plays, right? And
only
he didn't
that, but at
have that.
times his receivers were getting hurt as well. Like Jimmy Horn got hurt multiple times, I think, last year, and other one of their top young receivers that they expect to have a big role. He got hurt. I think he was out for the season after 4 or 5 games. So it
Right,
was that and guys getting hurt. And at one point, Travis Hunter was hurt as well.
right. I think if you had Shador Sanders with an offense that had Jamar Chase and the talent that LSU had in their year that they won the national championship, which was one of the best college teams of all time.
I mean, you're
If you
talking it was
if you
Jamar
sub
Chase, Terrence Marshall Jr., and Justin Jefferson, two first
yeah,
rounds and a second round pick.
right. If he was playing with that kind of talent, he would absolutely be the first overall
Oh
pick
yeah.
this year, right? He didn't, and I mean, he chose the situation he was in. He's one of the few people who truly chose and actually probably helped build the situation he was in, knowing who his father is. So it's not necessarily like, oh well, woe is him. He was coming from a bad team. Like he chose to play at Colorado and he knew what he was getting into. But his confidence is another thing that I really love. And I know a lot of people don't like it, but when you're coming into a team, say he does go to a team like Cleveland or New York Jets, right? His teammates
Or
are going
even
to love him.
Giants.
Or even Giants, right? His teammates are going to love him and rally around him and fight for him. And even if he doesn't have an amazing season, he's going to he's going to get the locker room behind him because he's going to build up that trust with his team. And the reason why I have him as number one is not necessarily because of anything bad about Cam Ward. It's because I just really love Shador Sanders as a prospect. And I love everything that he has going for him. I think translates really well into the NFL and has a good chance of him succeeding within the NFL because of all of his positives.
Yeah, and another thing with Sanders, I think his leadership is everything that a team is going to want because you're choosing to go to Jackson State with your father helping build that program up, which you did. They got to the championship, I believe, his sophomore year. Then you choose to go to Colorado. That's coming off one win, and you help rebuild that program and get them to 9 wins. That says more about the character than anything else. When you can rally that kind of team and get players there because not just because of the head coach, but because of you as well. And he's got nothing but praise from his teammates and people that personally know him.
Right.
They have said
Everyone
that
that's
he is a
around
good,
him
yeah,
loves him, right?
yeah,
Like it's he gets a lot of criticism, I think, from the media and from fans because of the attitude that he carries this confidence. But everyone that's been around him loves him, right? That's a huge green flag for me when I'm looking at prospects.
yeah. And I think that some of the negativity does come from the fact that he's Deion Sanders' son, and we know the way Deion played when he was in the NFL. But at the same time, Deion was one of the greatest corners of all time. Maybe you could make an argument for the greatest corner of all time. So he knows what it takes to be a great player in the NFL, and his son has the talent. I think he's got the right attitude. And if you get him into the right situation, you are going to have a decade long starter that's going to help you win games and maybe even take you to the promised land.
Exactly. I think the only thing that holds him and from whoever drafts him back is does how many sacks is he going to take, right? If he takes 40, 50 sacks in a season, it's gonna crush whatever team, right? Because he doesn't have that athleticism to get out and move, which that again, that's not what kind of quarterback he is. Um,
Don't think that he's that kind of quarterback.
yeah, and he
Really
also
don't think.
doesn't try to play that way.
No,
Um,
no, no, he really doesn't.
so I really like Shador Sanders,
Yeah,
and I wouldn't be surprised if he's not the first quarterback taken. I think Cam Ward might likely will go before he does, but I just really like Shador Sanders as a
yeah.
prospect.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was expecting both of us to have Sanders number two. That's why I was kind of off with the breakdown because I was not expecting to break down Sanders. I'll be honest. I really was not expecting to break him
Yeah.
down.
No, and then again, it's nothing against Cam Ward. I really
No,
like
no,
him,
no,
but
no.
I think
It really isn't.
he's a little bit more of a prospect than Shador is in my mind. And I think Shador fits a little bit better. He can more seamlessly translate into the NFL.
Yeah, I
Whereas,
think the odds are gonna be Sanders might have the best odds to be the week one starter for a team, whereas Ward, he might sit a few weeks, and then Jackson Dart, I could see him, sitting for half a season, maybe three-quarters of a season, and then everybody else is just gonna sit as a rookie.
everyone else is going to sit as a rookie, probably even their second year, right?
Or we have a Spencer Rattler type of situation where he goes to the Saints and they pretty much have
and
injured quarterbacks all throughout the
and they have
season.
nothing else to do. So they're like, all right, I guess we'll start Spencer Rattler, who, all things considered, played well, like played better than I thought he
Spencer
would.
Rattler's going to be in this league for a long time. I mean,
Yeah,
whether it's a starter or as a backup, it doesn't matter. He's going to stay, make a lot of money. He's going
yeah.
to tell people, I had a decade long career in the NFL, which not a lot of people can say.
Not a lot
Let's
of
be
people can
honest.
say, right? And
All
with
right.
kind of the hate that he had, a decade career is pretty good.
Yeah. So you already talked about Will Howard. Kyle McCord was the quarterback that he replaced at Ohio State. And then at Syracuse, he just went off. And I definitely think McCord is going to get drafted as a backup. Maybe he can be the Chase Daniel of this class.
Right. I think if McCord had played his whole career at Syracuse and had the year that he did last year, he would be a lot higher of a pick, right? The fact that he was at Ohio State and then didn't do that well and then goes to Syracuse and plays well, that's what the question is with
Also,
him
I think
is
he
he
just
couldn't
got
play.
way too much hate at Ohio State
I
because they
agree.
were
I
also
agree.
replacing a lot of guys at Ohio State.
Right. He was there at a transition period.
Yeah.
The fact that he didn't play well at Ohio State is really kind of the biggest knock against him is when he's playing against the best competition, he wasn't that great. If he played the way he did at Syracuse, if he was at Syracuse his whole career or a smaller school like that, he would be in my top five, right? I like McCord. I agree. He's definitely a backup. He's definitely a probably a day three pick.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing him going higher than going into the round three. Um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised with a round five, six, or seven pick for him. But I think he's a decent quarterback, right? I think
Yeah.
he's going to hang around for a while in the NFL.
A few guys that were transfers. Riley Leonard out of Notre Dame, believe started at Duke, has a very interesting relationship with his mother. I don't know if you know about it.
No. Oh my gosh. I don't want to know. I don't think.
No, 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 no. You do want to know. So, so he felt like he would play better if somebody would text him every game telling him he sucked, and his mother was the one to do that. Mother's love, right there.
Only a mom could do that though, right? Because you know
I
she doesn't mean
know.
it. You know she doesn't mean it.
Yeah. But Riley Leonard did a lot of good things in college. Definitely could see him seventh round pick and come in be a backup. Tyler, I believe this is pronounced Shaw from
Mhm.
Louisville. I no, I probably butchered it, didn't I? Didn't I?
I think that's how it's pronounced. I didn't watch
Okay,
a ton of Louisville, so I don't know.
okay, yeah. Another guy transferred to Louisville. Could see him get drafted in the seventh round. Not too confident there. Dylan Gabriel is a real wild card in this draft. I mean, he did a lot of great things in college, but he just doesn't have the tools to be an NFL quarterback. Definitely is at least going to get a camp invite. That's going to be an interesting one. Graham Mertz, he five-star prospect, stayed home at Wisconsin, didn't really do great things there. So he transfers to Florida, has a solid career there. We all know the story of Cam Rising and how long he was in college, and he probably would still be in college if he wanted to be. And then
Right.
KJ Jefferson from Central Florida was at Arkansas and went to goes to Central Florida. I think at least one of these guys are going to get drafted. Everybody else is going to
Yeah,
get a
I
camp
think
invite.
so. I agree. I think there's some decent talent there,
Yeah,
but nothing that really that makes me think these guys, have a shot to stick around.
yeah.
Um,
One guy that I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen with him, Brady Cook from Missouri, just because of what he was
yeah.
able to do at Missouri, teaming with Luther Burden and I believe their other receiver was named Theo Wise, who was also considered a
Mhm.
top prospect in this draft. So Brady Cook and his two receivers did a lot of good things at Missouri, and I mean he had him ranked the last two seasons where Missouri was not to be thought of as that much of a contender in the SEC, and they showed, hey, we're here and we can make some noise. And then Steph Hannigan from Memphis, always have a quarterback like this, a guy that is coming from a a smaller school, not a Power Five school, that just has a crazy year and is on draft boards. So I just want to see him get drafted for that.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think outside the top three, the the talent really drops off.
I've
And
got
honestly, outside the top two, I think the talent drops off. No offense against Jackson Dart, but once you get outside the top five, then or maybe even the top six or seven, you're really kind of you're digging deep there. So
yeah.
I think there's probably I would say seven draftable
Yeah,
quarterbacks.
I have under 7.5 quarterbacks drafted in this
Yeah,
class.
yeah,
That's
I
what I
think
have.
that's reasonable. It really kind of depends on how people feel about, your Will Howards and Will Howard's going to get drafted, but
Yeah. Kyle
some of those other
McCord definitely could get drafted just because of that one year at Syracuse. Riley Leonard's, like I said, he had great career at Duke, did okay this year at Notre Dame. Well, he led them to the national championship, so
He led them to the
that's
national
something.
championship, and I guess if I have Will Howard in my top five for winning a national championship, I should give Riley Leonard some credit for
Yeah.
getting to a national championship, even though they
And
got
then
dog
Dylan
walked.
Gabriel with all the great seasons he had between the schools that he went to. So there is a lot of great college players in this draft, but
Mhm.
just not a lot of NFL talent in this draft when it
Right.
comes to quarterbacks. So let's break down these teams right now. So we're going to start with the AFC, move to the NFC. So in
Mhm.
the East, Bills, I mean, they have Josh Allen, who,
And they're good.
if it wasn't for
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes, I think he would already be a Super Bowl champion. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Josh
I
Allen
mean,
is a
he just
great
won the
quarterback. Bills are
MVP.
fine.
Whether he should have won the MVP, that's up for discussion, but
Uh, I mean, I'm fine with
we're not
it
going to get
because
into that, Sam. We're
yeah,
not going to
that's
get,
not what
yeah,
this
yeah,
video is about. That's
yeah.
not what this video is about.
Miami, I could see them take a developmental backup just because of the injury history with Tua, but just don't expect them to be a surprise first round pick because they did just pay Tua a whole bunch of money. But
How
a
many
developmental
years does he have
prospect,
left on his contract? That's my
I think it was a
question.
5 year deal. I believe it was a five
Because
year.
if I'm my 4 year deal in 2024, so yeah, he's got a
Oh,
lot of time left.
yeah.
Um,
And that's
he,
why I say developmental guy.
yeah, Jalen Milrow, I think would be interesting within this
Yeah.
offense, right? Because it's a fast offense. If Tyreek is still there starting this season, so
I think
I could,
Tyreek is going to be there. I think they patched that up already.
yeah, I think they patched that up pretty quickly too. But Jalen Milrow, I think in that kind of offense and a Mike McDaniel offense, there's just so much other speed in there. My first thought is let's get a fast guy to be a backup, right? They really do need a backup, which
Yeah,
kind
they
of
do.
says what it does about Tua. If you're like, we need to have a really good backup because our starter isn't consistent enough. Um,
Well, he's not
I
consistently healthy when he's on the field. He's good.
right, he's okay. He's okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I could see them dabbling in one of those middle round picks. I like Jill. Actually, now that I'm bringing it up, I like Jalen Milrow to Miami in that kind of offense
Yeah, I'm
with the
thinking that
talent
can
he
work
has.
as well. The only question I'm going to have is how much longer is his coaching staff going to be around? Because if Miami
That's a good
can't get over
question.
the hump of December, they're going to be gone
They're going to be gone.
in
Yeah, I agree.
2026.
I agree.
They have to get over that hump of December. They have to. They cannot continue to struggle once the calendar turns. But anyway, Patriots definitely not taking quarterback. Drake
No,
May
they're good.
had a good season. They need everything else.
Drake May had a good season with absolutely nothing, including a
Get him a
coaching
number
staff.
one receiver, get him a left tackle, and move from there. Jets, it's tough because I'm trying to figure out who could go who could go veteran, who could go rookie, and the Jets could literally do anything. I mean, it's literally up to them what they want to do.
Right.
They're not getting Sam Darnold. I don't think they want to go
No.
back to that again.
No. That would be
But a
hilarious
Justin
actually.
Fields or a Russell Wilson, I could definitely see as well. I could see them getting one of those two players.
I feel like they were so burned by going with Aaron Rodgers. I would imagine that they're going to want to go rookie, right?
Yeah,
So the question is, do they want to go with a rookie with their first round pick,
or
or
their
do they
second
want
round pick.
or their second round pick,
And that's why
right?
I'm bringing
Because
up Wilson because Wilson, I mean, he's in his mid 30s right now, but he can still be a solid starting quarterback. You can bring him in, have him be a bridge, have him, kind of be a little bit of a mentor, although he's going to have to want to be a mentor. I don't know if he
right,
would want to be a mentor, but at the
right,
same time, the Jets have to do something.
they have to do something.
They have too much talent on defense not to do something at quarterback. It was because of Zach Wilson that they missed the playoffs the year where their defense was just one of the best units.
Right, right.
Okay, so in the North, Bengals, Baltimore, they have top five quarterbacks. I mean,
They're fine.
yeah, they're fine. Cleveland, I don't know what they're going to do because they still have that money on Deshaun Watson's contract. I know a lot of people are saying they are they're locked in for a number they're locked in for quarterback number two overall. And I think they're the more likely team in the top three to take a quarterback the more that I think about it, but I don't think it's as locked in as we think. It's
I
just hard
think
right now for Cleveland because they are one step away from just tearing this team down. And I don't know if bringing in a rookie quarterback while you're doing a teardown is the way to go.
no, I agree. I don't think it's the way to go. And I think I don't imagine Myles Garrett is on the team come come week one, right?
So if Garrett
So
is
if
gone, I mean
that's
that
so
there's your
much cap,
defense.
right? That's so
Yep.
much cap penalties that they have for this year. I think the best thing now, this draft is interesting because I think there's going to be a lot of sellers and not a lot of buyers.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a lot of teams looking to trade up, I don't think. But I think the best thing for Cleveland is to, build the team around a pick later, right? A
This is
quarterback
what
later,
I'm gonna say. If Tennessee goes quarterback number one, Abdul Carter's right there.
right
Is
there,
right
right?
there at number two. And I know they had the Courtney
It,
Brown thing, but that's different. Okay. Courtney Brown was because of injury. Okay. If he
Now,
doesn't get
Abdul
injured,
Carter does have the injury concern, right? He's not getting surgery, but he does have the injured foot, which is never something that just goes away, right?
that's
Um,
true. That's
right.
true.
So,
But it's
but
not
by the
but
start of the
it's
season,
yeah.
he should be okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not as serious of an injury as say other foot injuries like a turf toe. It's it should be fine
it should be
from what I
fine. I
understand.
agree. Um, I think building, especially if you're going to trade away Garrett, getting an Abdul Carter makes a lot of sense.
Now I know New
Um,
England just did a similar thing, but that's New England, okay? And it doesn't always work the same way when you do it, especially when you're the Cleveland Browns and you've made the same mistake over and over and over
and
again.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, you know what? Go back to what you did in 2017. When you took Myles Garrett number one overall, you had three first round picks, didn't use them on a quarterback. You took Kaiser in the second round, but I think that was a risk worth taking,
I agree.
especially since you had three first round picks. Just build a team. And then
Hey,
in
they had
2018, they got Baker Mayfield, who I,
Baker
I still don't know
Mayfield.
what they were thinking with that.
I think he's definitely had a resurgence in
Yeah.
Tampa Bay. He's definitely a lot better of a quarterback in Tampa Bay than he was in Cleveland, but he was a good quarterback in
Yeah.
Cleveland, right? He took him to the playoffs.
Got
Um,
them a playoff win. The
yeah,
first win of the new Browns.
yeah. So I truthfully think they absolutely need a quarterback, but if the dream scenario for them would be able to trade back, get another first round pick for next year, and if they're not the worst team, to be able to trade up for Arch Manning if Arch Manning is what we think he is, right?
Or if they suck, they get the number one overall pick.
And then they have, yeah, exactly, right?
And then they
Um,
have their pick of the litter. So for
and
the
they'll have the
Browns,
cap space and
hmm
to build around the quarterback. This is just not the year for them to take a quarterback. They need a
but
quarterback,
I
right?
do get the whole thing because quarterback is the most important position, but you have to find the right time. And yeah, it just doesn't seem like the right time. Pittsburgh, meanwhile, definitely needs a quarterback. Could see them take Jackson Dart if Seattle doesn't pounce on that. Or they have said they want either Fields or Wilson back. But I just don't know how Fields goes back to Pittsburgh after what
I don't
happened
know
because
how he
he had
goes
a
back.
good seat because he was having a good season before he got benched for Russell Wilson. They were winning games with him at quarterback
Yeah,
and he wasn't making mistakes. So
right, right.
I
He
think Fields
wasn't.
just goes somewhere else. Wilson, I wouldn't resign him, but then again, it's Pittsburgh. They tend to do things a season too late.
Yeah, exactly. I think Wilson's ceiling is what they had last year was barely get into the playoffs, losing the wild card, and that's it, right?
Yeah,
I they kind of are frustrating to watch because they're always going to be picking in the 20s, so they're never
they're
going to be
in
able
the
to.
definition of football hell right now.
Yeah,
If
they
you
need.
do you watch Utree on YouTube?
No, I don't.
He's a big time Steelers fan, and he gets frustrated every year because it's the same thing over and over again that he has with. By the way, go check out Utree. He is fantastic. Despite
I
being a
will.
Steelers fan, he's great.
They need to do what the Chiefs did when they got Mahomes, right? They
Yeah,
need to be
exactly.
aggressive and move up. Say Shador Sanders or Cam Ward falls for whatever reason in the draft. If
Take
they're
him.
there at 10 or 11, you got to move up and get one
Yep.
of those two guys, right?
Yeah.
You they need to do something aggressive to get a
Yeah.
quarterback, right? I don't know if they will, but I could see them going with a Jackson Dart or Will Howard or something like that, a
Yeah.
little bit more of an established guy from college and putting him into the Mike Tomlin
Yeah.
system. Now Mike Tomlin is a defensive guy, but I could see that happening. What they need to do is be aggressive and get one of the top guys in this draft class because the class is considered kind of weak, right?
Yeah.
So there's a chance that one of those two might be around at pick 10, pick 11, right? They got to be
Right.
aggressive and get him.
All right, let's try to move quickly through
A
the
little,
rest of these
yeah,
teams. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so in the South, let's see. Texans, CJ Stroud, they're fine.
good.
Colts, they still have to figure out what they have with Anthony
They're
Richardson.
not taking
Definitely
a
don't want to
quarterback.
have another quarterback to figure out. Jaguars just signed
Trevor
Lawrence
Lawrence
to
to
a
a
big
big
time
deal.
contract. I think
They're
he'll
cutting
be good
everyone else,
as
but they're getting
I,
rid of everyone else, but they're keeping Trevor Lawrence, so they don't need a
I mean,
quarterback.
the thing is, I don't think Lawrence has uh, the right tools around him. And I'm not talking receivers, I'm
He's
talking coaches.
he never has,
Yeah.
right? So
The fact
we'll,
is, he's
we'll
put up decent stats since they
I think
got rid of
he's
Urban Meyer.
I
So
think he's fine, yeah. But
he's
they're not
fine.
going quarterback. They're
Yeah.
not going quarterback.
Titans at number one. What do they do? I don't know. I
I
don't
see
know.
the biggest thing is I don't know if like this is a good year for teams to trade back, but I just don't know if anyone's going to be trading up, right?
The only team I could possibly see is just from 3-1. That's it. I don't
Yeah,
see anybody else making that kind of trade. And even so, if the Giants do move up from 3-1, it's not going to be like two first rounders, two second rounders, stuff like that. It's not going to be what
yeah,
Carolina gave up to Chicago.
right. It's going to be a first round, probably a second round, and then some mid round picks going forward, right? Like,
But or mid round pick swaps too. Could see
yeah,
that
yeah,
as well.
exactly.
So
Um,
so
I
Tennessee,
think
they cannot go with Will Levis next year.
no,
They absolutely
no,
cannot. I mean, Will Levis, we know he was a project, but he just hasn't developed. I
no,
mean,
he
he
hasn't.
had the one great start, and he hasn't touched that since,
And
which
then
is a
he's just
problem.
every single game, it's been some form of an embarrassing turnover
There's a
where he's
reason
become a
why they. What's the meme nickname he has? I forget. Do you
my
remember what
friends
the
and I call him Mayo Boy because he puts mayo in his coffee. So that's all I know him as is Mayo Boy. But I
Yeah, they
know
say
all of the
he's a
memes
meme
of
every week. So, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, Tennessee has to do something, but I could see if they go get Sam Darnold, that would not shock me.
It wouldn't
It,
shock me. I think they have enough pieces on offense around because they still have Tony Pollard, they have Tajay Spears, they still have Calvin Ridley, right? Like they have some pieces, and if you put a veteran in there, I could see them going from what they were,
yeah, and it's
and they
all
have a
about,
good
yeah,
coach, right? So
yeah,
I, I, I think they're probably going to go Abdul Carter, and then either
or Hunter. I think it's either going to be one of those two guys.
I have a hard time if Travis Hunter was either a wide receiver or a cornerback. I think he has the. I think the fact that he does both limits his ceiling at both positions.
Okay,
And he's I think the most intriguing prospect. And he's an amazing athlete and he's worthy of it. But we'll see. We'll see. I
yeah,
think they need a quarterback though.
yeah. They need a quarterback, so it wouldn't surprise me if they go veteran. It wouldn't surprise me if they go rookie. It's really up to them.
Right. And
It's
that's the
really
beauty
up
of
to
the
their
first pick.
board as well. I think for them, just follow your board. Don't think you have to take a quarterback because we hear it all the time. Like when Cleveland in 2017, they said, okay, they're going to have to take a quarterback. They didn't.
They
And they
didn't, right?
still ended up with a quarterback the next year. So,
Exactly. Exactly. But
okay.
I think I will it'll be interesting to see what they do with the top five. I think will be interesting because
All right.
it's hard. There's no outstanding
Yeah.
prospect. I think
Yeah.
that well, Travis Hunter is amazing, but yeah.
It's a
So
two
we'll
sport thing that people still trying to wrap their head around. They still don't know
yeah,
how to
exactly.
approach that. Anyway, so in the AFC West, after the Geno Smith trade, absolutely nobody's taking a quarterback
No, no. I was
because
about to say the Raiders, and then I just
The
remembered.
Raiders are working on extension with Geno Smith, which is something I did not know at the time that I re-recorded it. So when you see it, I didn't actually use the re-recording because it just didn't make sense. So yeah,
Right.
the West,
They're good.
no one,
They're good.
they're
They
good.
all have their
In
quarterbacks.
the East, Eagles just won a Super Bowl. The Cowboys,
They're stuck with Prescott, who's again not a bad quarterback like we talked about, but
they
they're
can
not
win
moving
with
on
him.
from him.
I think with any other team, Prescott would have gotten them to the championship game, but because it's the Cowboys, I mean, they're just not good. Washington, I mean, Jane Daniels, he had a top three rookie QB season of all time.
He might have had the
The
best rookie
best.
season. Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
you're talking Stroud, Daniels, and probably Dan Marino. That would be my top three.
Yeah, and no, I agree. I think Jane Daniels, amazing season.
Yeah.
So they're definitely
But
not.
Giants, we talked about this a little bit with the trade up and the Giants. At first, I thought they're definitely taking quarterback number three, and then I thought more about it. It's like, are they though? Are they?
I
Because
think
you
they
have
have
Malik
to.
Neighbors, you have Tracy. Can you get away with going with a veteran? Honestly, I don't think so. But then again, I mean, it's the front office, and it's still there.
I
This is a front office that didn't sign Saquon Barkley, and they went with Daniel Jones. So
right, right. I think the spot at three is such a good spot for the Giants to be
I
to
know a
need a
lot of people
quarterback.
gave him grief, but at the same time, I don't think a quarterback's going 1-2. You're
I
gonna
don't think
have at
so.
least one of those two guys.
I think 1-2 is probably going to be Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, right?
Yeah. And if the
Um,
Titans call you and just say, "Hey, can't if you want to trade up, just give
right.
us this," and it's not that bad. The Giants
And it
want to
makes
take
sense,
quarterback,
right?
just do it.
It
Just
makes
do it.
sense
It's
for the
not.
Giants to move
Yeah.
up to one to take the quarterback that they want, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to have to pay a lot, I don't think, to go from three to one. Um,
And I was just doing the offseason recap. I gotta see. I'm gonna check the salary cap that they had. You continue, and then I'll
uh,
let you
I
know.
I think the Giants are the most likely to take a quarterback
Yeah.
out of the two teams, the Browns and the Titans. I think the Giants are the most likely to take one. The question is, which one are they taking? Right? Is something about Shador Sanders and his confidence and moxie going to New York. Something about that
I
just sits
think New
so right
York, I
with
think the
me.
Giants are his preferred team, though. And I could definitely see that. I think him and the Giants would just be a great match.
I agree, and just I like Malik Neighbors with either quarterback, really, Cam
Yeah.
Ward or Shador Sanders. Um, I think regardless of the situation, I like the Giants to take a quarterback. It's just which quarterback do they like better, right?
Yeah.
Do they
And
like
here's the
Cam
thing
Ward
they,
or do they like
oh,
Shador Sanders?
yeah. And I just looked it up. At, at the time that I was recording, they had 48 million in cap space. Now, I can't imagine that's changed a whole lot. So if I were the Giants, I'd get veterans on the offensive line, maybe get
Absolutely.
a corner across from Deontay Banks, and then take a quarterback in the first round.
Right. Looking at the top 10, right, out of teams taking quarterbacks or out of quarterback needy teams, you have one, two, three. All three could use a quarterback. Titans, Browns, Giants. And then four is the Patriots, five is Jaguars, Raiders, and then the Jets, right? So
Yeah.
really, I think the teams taking quarterbacks is going to be three New York Giants and then seven New York Jets. Um,
Which I could definitely see.
yeah, I mean, honestly, looking at all of the teams, even going up until really up until you get the Seahawks, there's not a lot of quarterback needy
Yeah.
teams. So
Yeah.
I I I can see that it really kind of depends on what the Titans do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the Titans hold all the cards in this draft. So that's the thing. The draft truly starts at number one. We haven't had
which
that in so long.
right, right. And it's always been like we know who's going number one and
Yeah.
who's like we've known that for the past couple
And
years. This
even
year
in
it's a big question.
2022, when it was Trayvon Walker, where everybody thought it was Aiden Hutchinson, the draft still started at three
It's yeah,
because we
exactly
knew
right,
if the Jaguars didn't take Hutchinson, we knew the Lions were going to take him.
right, right.
So, and we take a look at everybody else. The North, no. I mean, you have contract extensions, young guys. No, no,
Yeah,
no.
North
Only
is
thing I
good.
could see is a backup.
Right.
And even then, that's
Um,
probably going to be a camp invite more than
right.
anything. In
NFC
this
South uh,
only team is the Saints.
is the Saints, right? And I
But
think they're
even
in a
so, they're
bad
going
spot.
with they're going with Derek Carr. And
Right,
do I think
right.
it's the right move? No, but again, it's
That
like
they've committed to Derek Carr, right?
yeah,
Like the only way that I think they take a quarterback is if they trade up, and I don't know if they're going to trade up, right? Because you're losing out on they need to build up young talent in the
yeah.
team because they have so much cap space invested in veterans. So you need
That
to
they
get
have no
cheap,
cap space.
right? So you
They
need to
are in
have
salary cap
cheap
hell
talent.
every single year, and until Mickey Loomis is gone, I think they're always going to be in salary cap hell.
Exactly. And if you're going to be in that position, you need to have cheap talent
Yeah.
at valuable positions, right? And they're tied up with quarterback with Derek Carr, love him or hate him. I don't love him. Um,
No, I
I
like
I
him. I
think
don't love him. I just don't
they
like him on the Saints.
they need a quarterback, but I think the only way that they go quarterback is if they trade up, and I don't think they're going to trade
I
up.
don't even think they have the draft capital to trade up.
Probably don't, right? Like
Yeah.
unless they're going to what they do every year, borrow from future years.
Yeah.
But even
Uh,
so, like they don't have enough ones, I think, to move ahead of the Jets or any of the other teams, right? So
no. All right. And in
Falcons,
the West,
no, they're good.
yeah.
Um,
Panthers
and then Panthers,
go
no.
with Bryce Young, see if he takes
Bryce
the next
Young,
step next year. I
yeah,
can't
and
believe what happened with Bryce Young. The fact that he was benched and then he comes back and I'm not going to say it was spectacular, but he played
he
solid
took a
football
step.
and
Yeah,
yeah, and
I
he
liked him.
kept
I like him coming into
Carolina
this year.
competitive.
Yeah, exactly. I like Bryce Young coming into this year, and I did not feel that way. Even the beginning of last year, I was kind of
And I know
hesitant
I
on
had him
him.
as a breakout candidate, but that was because I felt like he had to break out or else Carolina was going to go quarterback searching, but I was wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and he did what he needed to do. I like Bryce Young there.
Yeah. So we have that and then
NFC
Bucks have
West.
a yeah, and the Bucks have
Oh,
Mayfield,
Mayfield. Yeah,
who has led into the playoffs since he's been there, continued the solid play there.
they could
And the
use taking a mid round pick on a guy and letting him sit behind Baker Mayfield,
yeah,
and see if that guy can develop. Otherwise, they just stick with Baker Mayfield because I can't imagine you're going to have at some point you teams need a rookie quarterback or a quarterback on a rookie contract. You can't keep paying a quarterback 40 to 50 million a year when you're still trying to build up talent in other spots.
but I
Um,
think the Buccaneers can still get away with it with Mayfield at this point.
oh, absolutely. I think they can
It's
do
going
it
to
for the
be
next
probably
three
in the next
years, right?
2 3 years probably that we
Exactly,
talk about
exactly.
when do the Bucks take a quarterback, and then in the West, Arizona still has Kyler Murray. I mean, they shocked people last year. To me, they
The
shocked
question is,
people.
it's not necessarily Kyler Murray. I think the question is when are they going to move on from Kyler Murray? Because Kyler Murray, I think at this point has pretty clearly
Yeah,
not been the answer to be the guy who gets them to win the division and take him to a deep playoff run. I don't think he's that guy with Arizona. So the question is, when are they moving on? It's definitely not this year. I don't think it's next year. We'll see what happens 3 years down the line. Um,
yeah.
but they're not going quarterback this year.
Yeah, no, like I was saying, they're a team that might be on the rise a little bit after last year, and the draft class that they had, those guys are now another year older. So just stick with Murray, see what happens, and then figure out your future later, which some of these
Right,
teams
right,
just do that. I mean, we
right.
see teams do it all the time. And then Rams, they're sticking with Matthew Stafford, and this is just not a draft, I think, for them to take a quarterback, especially since you don't know what's going to happen in the future, especially with Sean McVay, because it's like the last 5 years we wondered how much longer is Sean McVay going to be their head
Right,
coach.
right. When is he moving to TV is always the question with Sean
Yeah.
McVay, right? Matthew Stafford is getting older. How many years does he have left in the tank? This might be
On
his
it,
last year.
honestly,
I
I
wouldn't be
think it's
shocked,
next
right?
year that we start to see the young quarterback enter the Rams. 49ers, they're working on a contract extension with Brock Purdy. How much do you want to pay him? That's the question.
Yeah, the question is how much are they working? Because the report is that they offered him 45 million, which is just not a competitive offer with this landscape. I agree with not paying him 60 million,
Yeah.
but you're paying him less than Dak Prescott. And he
How
took you
much is
to a Super
Prescott
Bowl.
making again?
I think Prescott's around 45 million,
Hmm.
45 to 50. Derek Carr is making what he's making, and you're going to offer, I think Derek Carr is around 40 to 45,
Yeah.
and you're going to offer him that, right? Like Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than those guys. Who I think he definitely has some limitations, and he benefits from Kyle Shanahan's system.
But what quarterback doesn't benefit from the system that they're in?
Exactly, right? They're definitely not going quarterback this year,
Yeah.
unless they don't, get a deal with Brock Purdy, and then do you trade Brock? Like, if you can't come up to an agreement, what do you do? Do you franchise tag him? Do you trade
Yeah.
him? Well, like,
Yeah, it's a lot of questions that need to be answered, but they're probably not going to be answered this year. And
yeah,
then
exactly.
Seahawks, I mean, they just traded Geno Smith, the deal that just blew everyone's mind. Because
So
I knew they were gonna have to do a young quarterback, and I thought it could be this year, especially at 18 or in the second round. Now they're probably taking a quarterback in the first round.
I it's shocking that they moved on from Geno Smith, but I see why they would because last year they just weren't they couldn't make the playoffs last year with Geno Smith, right? So why not try to make a swing for it? And I think a third round pick is quite impressive for an aging quarterback who needs a contract extension. To be able to get a third round pick for that is pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah, that is.
So it makes sense, right? Like move on a year early rather than a year late from Geno Smith. Get some draft capital and we'll see what happens. I mean, if they can't get a veteran quarterback or they don't get a rookie quarterback that they like, then kind of what happens, right? Because if this blows up in their face, and it very well could,
They could have the number one overall pick,
right? Because if
Which could be Arch Manning.
which could be Arch Manning, right? And I don't want to put the cart before the horse and say Arch Manning is surefire the number one pick because we've seen that in previous years where we say, oh, this guy's absolutely the best prospect,
Yeah,
and
I
then
think the only times we've seen that has been Andrew Luck and Caleb Williams. And I
right,
think that's it. And
right.
when it comes to
Trevor
quarterback,
Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence as
Trevor
well.
Lawrence, yeah, Trevor Lawrence, and I think that's been it with quarterback prospects.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
there's been a
one year
lot
with
of
Sam
guys.
Darnold, like another
Um,
year we didn't even have a quarterback at 19. We didn't have a quarterback number one overall. So yeah, there is that conversation with that. But at the same time, for the Seahawks, it could work out for them in the long run the same way that when the Lions traded Matthew Stafford, that did end up working in the long run, just in a different way. So it
that's
is
a little
probably
bit
thinking
different
ahead. I know it's a little bit different,
because
but
they got a quarterback out of that trade.
yeah. But I think
Um,
nobody thought Jared Goff was going to be there long term. So right now,
right,
the question long term is up for debate in Seattle. I just mean at the end, it's going to work out well for them
right.
more
I
than
have
it will
no
the
idea.
Raiders.
I have no idea what they're going to do with their quarterback situation.
But
I
you gotta
don't
love
imagine that you move
watching
on
it.
from Geno Smith and then saying, well, we'll just go with another veteran, right? But at 18, like your option is probably Jackson Dart,
And if you
who's
don't think he has that ability, which I know some teams are not going to feel that way, why take him?
why take him, right? And why not take someone who's more talented at a less valuable position? But then what are you doing at quarterback, right?
Get your
Are
defensive
you
tackle. You need to stop the run.
right? Are you going to do Sam Howell as your quarterback for the year? Like he's not a terrible option, but he's not great, right? So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I could very easily see them not taking a quarterback at 18,
Yeah.
even if Jackson Dart is there, right? They
I think
need a
all of us
quarterback.
can. It's just we're still trying to process this and then figure out what are they going to do, which
And then
it's
the
the
other question
Seahawks.
is
We
DK
never
Metcalf,
know.
right?
Huh?
The other question is what are they doing with DK Metcalf, right? Because what if they trade DK Metcalf and they get a first round pick and now they have the capital to move up and take a Cam Ward or a Shador
Oh,
Sanders,
I
right?
just thought of no, I just thought of something. What if the Patriots call them up, offer them number four for DK Metcalf?
Number no, they need to give up they would need to give up DK Metcalf and 18 for number four, and then probably a couple more picks. Probably a
Okay.
first next year too,
Okay.
and then still a second either this year or next year. They would
Okay.
probably need a lot because DK Metcalf still needs an extension. But
Yeah.
I would love that for the Patriots, right? Like to get a lot of capital and then get DK Metcalf with a rookie quarterback who's good, and then to have the cap space to extend DK Metcalf,
Hmm.
that's like the Eagles getting AJ Brown, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that would take Drake May to
Which
the
is
next level.
crazy because the Eagles into that draft had three first round picks. They used one of them.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that this? No,
That
that
was the
wasn't the same
Saints.
year. Oh yeah. Yeah, so we'll see. I think the Seahawks, I just can't imagine they trade Geno Smith and then just say, yeah, we'll sign another veteran quarterback, right? Like
Yeah.
they're moving on from a veteran quarterback for a reason. But I could also very easily see them not taking a quarterback at 18.
Yeah. It's just nuts with the Seahawks because we can debate about this until we're blue in the face, but at the same time, we have to wait until free agency. We have to wait until the draft. Free agency is
Right.
coming up soon, but if they
I
don't do
think this
anything, then we
is
have to wait till the draft.
I think this is also the first year that we've done this before pro days, which gives when you do it during after pro days, you get the free agency to happen, right? So we see a little bit more of what's
Yeah.
going on. So I think it's going to be a fun off season, especially with
Oh,
what
this is going to
the
be such a
Seahawks
fun
moves.
offseason, especially since the Ravens just got Ronnie Stanley back.
Yeah, yeah. So one less question, one less huge question for the Ravens moving into next season.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very much so. All right, guys. That was our breakdown of the top five quarterbacks. Thank you for sticking around for this. Sam and I, we have fun doing this every single year. And Sam, we're going to do our mock draft again, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
And at this point, I don't have a first overall pick. This is going to be
Yeah,
fun. So much fun.
yeah. It's gonna be a fun puzzle, trying to put it all together. I don't have a first overall pick. I feel pretty good about Abdul Carter at number one, but I can't
I'm
say
feeling
for
pretty good
sure,
about that too, I'll be honest.
right?
But
Obviously, free agency needs to happen first. We'll
mhm,
see if Myles Garrett is on the Browns, all that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, this is going to be a fun off season. Yeah, lots of trades, lots of surprises, and can't wait for all of it. And at this point, everybody still has their first round picks.
right, right. How often does
So
that happen, truthfully?
it does not. So who will actually hold on to their first round pick? That's going to be a big question, too. But as always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.